So, hi everyone, you're listening to our Biome video podcast about Eurasian beavers, and we are Emma and Roby.
Hello, I'm Roby, she's Emma, just in case you didn't get that.
Yeah, so we're really excited. This is our first video podcast that we're doing, and yeah, Roby and I love beavers, so we thought we needed to do them justice and kind of they're incredible animals.
We are very big beaver fans. We went looking for beavers recently and we managed to get beavers on camera traps, but no real life footage, so we have to return in the spring when they're more active.
Absolutely.
So we thought the way we'd do it is we'd go through like a little bit of what is a beaver, their biology, a little bit of paleontology.
You love your paleontology.
I love my paleontology. And then we're going to go through a bit of the massive environmental impacts they have and the way they change the environment. We're going to go over their exploitation and why, sadly, they were driven extinct in the UK. And then we're going to talk about current reintroduction efforts that are ongoing. We're going to talk about illegal beavers, which is...
Because that's a thing.
a thing. And we're going to do like a little profile at the end where we tell you how feasible this species is for reintroduction.
Yeah, so there's so much about beavers. So if you haven't seen a beaver before, they are a lot bigger than we thought they were. I don't know if you found the same, Roby, when we were looking at the camera trap footage. I was like, oh my goodness, they're chonky. They're really big.
We got this we think maybe the parents that we got on the camera trap, and they're massive and fat. I mean, maybe they're just fluffy, but...
I mean, I think bones. a lot of that is their fur, because they are sort of famous for this thick, dense fur. But they are the second largest rodent in the world. So that's behind capybara.
Yeah.
So same kind of group as rats and things like that. And they have these massive, so characteristic of rodents, these massive incisors at the front of their mouth. And they use
Which kind of look like they haven't brushed their teeth.
It really does. It's kind of orangey tinge. It's a interesting structure.
That's because of it's the iron content, isn't it? I think it's the iron content which turns their teeth this kind of weird orange, like they've been eating too many Cheetos.
Yes.
Type colour.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
And yeah, so just to go back to their size, obviously they are the second biggest rodent, and they can weigh 30 kilograms.
That's a lot.
Which is twice the weight of a dog of a similar size. So they really do, pack it away. And you're right, like a lot of this is fur. And the reason for this is it's under fur. They've got 2 layers of fur, obviously, because they're aquatic. They spend most of the time in the water. And the under fur is actually impermeable to water because it's got between 12 and 23,000 hairs per square centimetre.
That's insane.
Which is many hairs.
It is a lot of hairs. And also with the under hairs, I think we'll talk about this later when we talk about exploitation, but what makes them unique is they've got these barbs on them. So the hairs actually hook together and basically can create almost like this bubble around the beaver when they're underwater, which is just awesome.
That is so cool. Yeah. So what a lot of people don't realise about beavers is there are actually 2 species, because when we think of beavers, I think most of us tend to think of, Yellowstone and North America, all these beavers, but there are actually 2 species. So there's the American beaver, which is Castor canadiensis.
Have to throw a Latin name in there.
Yeah, I know. And the Eurasian beaver, which is Castor fiber. And the Latin for fibre... This is quite interesting, actually, because this brings in pop culture, which is not something I usually do. The Latin for beaver is fibre, and the inversion of B and F in a lot of European languages, in particular in German and Yiddish, means that Latin for fibre in German and Yiddish and Latin for beaver is Bieber. So Justin Bieber is actually Justin Bieber.
That is so interesting. Language is a whole nother tangent that's just so interesting. But Yeah, amazing that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool because I love a bit of Latin and etymology. Okay, so shall we go on to perhaps the coolest part of beavers, just because we should probably, keep the pace going. The environmental impacts, which we saw when we went down to Devon to see these beavers.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly incredible how they can transform landscapes completely. So, yeah, Roby went down kind of a week before me. You were scouting out the area, looking for beaver signs, which was awesome. And sort of a big part of what beavers do is so they'll cut down trees in kind of these pencil shapes, and they'll take down quite big trees. And they kind of use that in building lodges and dams and things like that. But an important part of that management is sort of if trees come down, that's exposing a lot of light to the undergrowth. You've got lots of plant growth, so huge plant biodiversity that can be supported because of beavers cutting down these trees.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone listening and watching will know, but obviously beavers are most famous for making these dams across lakes. And when they create the dams, this obviously backs up the river behind, and that creates a nice still deep pool. And the reason they create this pool is, I think I've kind of come across two reasons, which I think you probably would have as well, Emma. So the first one is they like a nice deep pool to build their lodge in, which is obviously where they live, and because it's in the middle of a lake, they can't be attacked by anything like wolves and bears or lynx, which would be their natural predators. And the other reason they like the lakes is because that water then will flood the nearby forest. That means they can swim through the flooded forest and access loads of kind of nice new vegetation without actually having to leave the water, which is very cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredible. They basically can engineer their environment to suit their behaviours, and so, like you were mentioning about the predator thing. So, I mean, we didn't see the actual lodges because we think the ones that we were looking at had these bank lodges. But if you have these typical kind of conical structures that you probably associate when you think of sort of beavers, the entrance to that lodge is completely underwater. And then, like Roby mentioned, they flood the forest, so they can be completely sort of in a safe environment underwater, foraging, feeding, enter their lodge. So yeah, I find it fascinating how they can change a landscape like that. And then, like we were saying as well when we were actually with the talking about beavers,
we didn't manage to get with the beavers. I wish
that would have been great. But how this has massive knock-on effects as well, not just for the beavers, but other species as well. So if you've got stagnant pools, that's fantastic for things like dragonflies and other small insects, which then boost bat populations. And then
that's the really cool bit.
Yeah.
I think the beavers building up bat populations is perhaps the coolest thing about beavers for me, I think.
Yeah, and then obviously you've got the whole flooding mitigation, which is they're building these massive dams, which creates the pool of water behind. So that means that downstream, the risks of flooding are reduced. So that is why a lot of conservationists are looking into using beavers as a means of flood control, which is we love beavers. Like, they do so much. Beavers are just epic not little, they're chunky, big.
They're quite chunky, yeah. and I think that's a really nice solution to a problem which is largely man-made. The vast majority of floods in the UK, at least, occur because we've straightened and canalised the rivers. Oh my god, every conversation I have with you seems to involve the canalisation of rivers.
Yes.
And obviously, because we extensively graze the highland areas, all the water just comes sheeting off. And so I think this is really innovative to have this natural solution to a problem that was our devising. But it's interesting because damming behaviour is one of the reasons why people do have an issue with beavers. And weirdly enough, even though beavers are entirely vegetarian, the biggest opposition to beaver reintroduction in the UK, at least, is from the Angling Trust, because they're concerned about the effects that new dams will have on diadromous fish. So those are fish like salmon, which live at sea and then swim up rivers in order to spawn, and they think that the dams might block that. But I think it's very important to remember, as Ross Barnett, a really fantastic author, in his book The Missing Links, which is I highly recommend.
Such a good book.
I don't know if I can say that on a podcast. Is that advertising? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a good book.
he very astutely notes that it is important to remember that salmon and beavers coexisted in Eurasia and North America for hundreds of thousands of years before we even left Africa. And if they got on then, they can probably get along pretty well now. And beaver dams, as we saw, they're quite low down.
They're
quite
full
porous
of holes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a non-issue, I think.
I think another interesting thing, like you were mentioning, saying how beavers are vegetarian, there is still quite sort of a perception that beavers will take fish sort of as part of their diet. And it was interesting, I was reading yesterday that some of that might be... I'm not blaming C.S. Lewis here at all. But in his... They mentioned that could be a role, because beavers are known in his book, in Narnia, and they eat fish. And so people watching that, I don't know, they were mentioning there could be some link that it's still in popular kind of literature and books and things like that they are fish eaters, even though they're vegetarian.
That's so cool. I mean, I don't think C.S. Lewis is as good as J.R.R. Tolkien, so it's fine if we want to blame C.S. Lewis for this. But it's interesting you say about the fish, because during medieval times, the Catholic Church classified the beaver as a fish because it lived in the water and had a scaly tail, because that meant during Lent, its meat could still be eaten when the meat of like pigs and cows and sheep couldn't be eaten. Which is, a cunning little thing the Catholic Church have done there to wiggle around that.
Yeah, I was reading about that, and it was like, I mean, yes, it's aquatic. It's amazingly well adapted to its aquatic environment, but it's not a fish. Just for people...
I mean, fish don't exist. We know this now. There's no such thing as fish.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
Let's not go down that tangent. But that, the whole thing about people eating beaver is probably a good segue to talk about the exploitation and extinction, localized at least, of the beaver. Do you want to take it away with that?
Yeah. So it's quite sad, actually. This tends to be a human... We talk about this a lot, a theme with humans exploiting the natural world and species in sort of every shape and form. So let me just see if I can find it, because there was... description from someone's book which I really liked. So it's someone called Rachel Poliquin. I hope I'm saying her name right.
What a lovely name.
Yes, I like her name.
I've not heard that one before. That's lovely.
And she wrote a book called Beaver, which is obviously about beavers. I had no idea. I know, shocker. And a big thing in her book is about the human infatuation with beaver parts. And so she kind of splits it into what she calls the 4 beaver romances, which is, I quite like how she's done this.
I love her kind of way with words and her style. It's fantastic.
I kind of want to meet her. But basically the 4 parts that she's split it into in terms of their exploitation. So you've got its musk, its fur, its ability to build, and its ecological transformations. So the first 2 are kind of more linked with exploitation, and then the last 2 are more just how humans perceive them and kind of, well, like we were mentioning, all their different roles that they play. So the thing with the musk, this is probably the weirdest way that they've been exploited, but also especially in Europe, was probably the main reason that they were driven to extinction. So what we mean by musk is, so all animals...
What do we mean by musk? Because I have many different definitions of musk, it must be said.
Okay, what it means in this sense is, so almost all animals have scent glands, or a lot of them do anyway, ones which are territorial. So beavers have these anal scent glands, or these how to call them? These scent glands called castor sacs, and they
which is actually Greek.
Yeah.
Just popping in there with the little,
And what they use these for, it produces a secretion called castoreum. And this is what beavers use for territorial marking, for kind of communicating through scent with other beavers. But what humans have decided to do with this is something very different. So this liquid, castoreum, was used for a variety.
Is it a liquid? Is it a liquid? Is that what it is? Because I'm really sorry to interrupt. I've not seen what it actually looks like.
I would say liquid, assuming if it's like something that's sprayed or kind of left for scent marking, I would assume that it's kind of a liquidy thing. And it was used for a variety of ailments, so things like fevers, headaches, sort of emotional distress. It was a whole range of things that it was used for. But they were, exploited massively for this. And not only this, but also their testicles, which...
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, actually, because these castor sacs, they look like testicles, so they were often confused for them. But it was...
And so where are the actual testicles?
They are internal as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So
that is quite a good tangent into the very, very weird mythology surrounding beaver testicles. So because they don't have any external testicles, and because they were so hunted for the castoreum and for the actual testicles, it was believed that when hunters were pursuing beavers to kind of cut off the testicles, the beavers would self-castrate and chew off the testicles with their teeth.
Ooh. Ow.
And
ow.
I know, ow. But that was what was believed so that they could escape death. And
but do they actually chew off their scent glands then?
No, this is all, I don't know if I can swear on this, but all bollocks.
Oh, I see what you did there. That was, nice.
That was a bad pun. Anyway. But yes, so as crazy as this sounds, this was believed for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It was taught as fact in the Roman and Greek Empire. The fact that you had these self-castrating beavers that would like chew off their testicles and chuck them at the hunter if they were being pursued. So that's an insight into the mythology behind beavers.
I'm so glad I now have that insight.
I thought you'd want to know that.
So moving on from beaver testicles. So obviously, as you said, beavers were hideously exploited, as you know, we have so many species, and they were actually driven to extinction in the UK. So in England and Wales, we think we lost our last beavers in the 14th century. Although there's a tantalising reference to a last beaver in Yorkshire in the 1700s, but no one's quite sure if that's legit or not. And then the last Scottish beavers went in the 16th century on the River Ness, it is thought. So we lost our beavers. Canada lost a whole load of beavers. They reckon 10 million at least were killed for their fur alone, and that's not taking into account all the other beavers which were killed for their testicles.
But I think that's an interesting point. It's like in Europe, sort of they were exploited massively to extinction, sort of like you were saying in the 16th century. And then once people realised there was this reservoir of millions of beavers in North America, then it was this massive exploitation, more from the fur side in terms of fur hats, fur garments, and then we basically eradicated them there as well, or drove them close to extinction.
And I was quite interested to learn that actually it was not so much the loss of the beaver, meaning we couldn't hunt anymore, that slowed our hunting of them. It was actually the introduction of silk as a luxury good for hat interiors.
Yeah.
Which is, when you think about it, it's such a human reason for stopping to drive something to extinction. Oh, we actually prefer silk.
Yeah, it's either we drive them to extinction and there's none left, like it was in Europe, or in North America, something else comes along which humans like more.
Woo!
Oh.
So yeah, in Eurasia, the beavers were reduced to 8 refuge populations. So you had them on the River Elbe in Germany, the Rhone in France, Telemark province in Norway, and then some isolated river systems in Russia. And so it's these relic populations that now we're recolonizing and repopulating Europe with. And what's quite interesting is that these relic populations can fall into 2 distinct genetic clades, a western clade and an eastern clade. And that line, that kind of imaginary line, is basically drawn on a map from Poland all the way down. And so the beavers we used to have in the UK were members of the western clade.
So is that important then with reintroduction, that if we are to reintroduce species, say to the UK, they would need to be of that particular group, so the western ones?
I mean, it's super important in terms of species. We shouldn't introduce American beavers to the UK, because American and Eurasian beavers have been evolving separately for about, I think it's 7 million years. I'm going to check that because I don't want to be wrong on that. But yeah, I think it's something like 7 million years. Regardless, it's at least for longer than we've been separate from chimpanzees.
Yeah.
So obviously there's differences in behavior. So American beavers are much bigger dam builders than Eurasian beavers, so we can't introduce American ones. But on the species level, it's also quite important because obviously Western Eurasian beavers are perfectly adapted to British waterways. They'll have resistance to British pathogens in the water. Their gut bacteria will be genetically influenced to be more able to process the sorts of food we get here, as opposed to the sorts of food you get in Eastern populations. So actually, it's not just a case of whacking in a beaver and calling it a day. You've got to really think carefully about how you reintroduce them.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us a bit more about how the reintroduction efforts have gone and how we now have illegal beavers, which is weird?
Yeah, I find this incredible. I mean, so like you said, I think there were some efforts in the past where people were unable to distinguish between sort of the Canadian, North American beaver and the Eurasian one, because morphologically they are basically the same. So we have had cases of a few mishaps in terms of releasing the wrong kind of beaver. But then you've also, so I think the first, one of the first trial reintroductions of legal beavers was in 2009, and this was in Knapdale in Argyll, so that's up in Scotland. And
I think that was the first legal one, actually.
Yeah. No, I think that was, because that was using Norwegian beavers from Telemark. So it's all...
And they fall on the right side of the western-eastern divide.
Yeah, yeah. So these are the right kind of beavers, and what was done, it was a 5-year trial. So this tends to be the theme with beaver reintroductions, is that you'll introduce a very small number, often just a single pair, and then you'll need vigorous scientific monitoring for about a 5-year period to see if they're going to have a positive impact or not. But actually, so since this 2009 reintroduction in Argyll, there have been several. So actually, where Roby and I were looking for beavers on the River Otter.
Confusingly.
Yeah, they need to change.
We also did see an otter on the River Otter, just to make it even more confusing. But yes.
But there, I think you also have a licensed legal beaver project that is currently being monitored.
But originally they were illegal.
Yeah.
The Devon ones. They started out illegal, and then someone realised that, oh my god, there's 150 beavers running about. So this illegal introduction is actually the largest population in England now. But now they are licensed, and now they've been...
Because I think the illegal one is up in Tayside in Scotland.
Yeah.
So that is about 250 individuals, and this is a couple years ago, so it could even be more.
We should go to Tayside.
We definitely should. But I don't know, I just find it mental that you've got illegal beavers, and then because there's now such a big population, they are now shooting beavers in Tayside as a means of trying to reduce the numbers, which for a lot of conservationists, this seems mental. Like, there are suitable areas across the UK where they could be translocated to. So there has been a lot of sort of divide in that as to why they are shooting these beavers.
Yeah, absolutely. Just if you've got too many beavers in an area, trap them and then transport them to somewhere where there aren't beavers. So I know the last population of beavers in Wales before they were driven extinct was the River Typhy.
Yeah.
And apparently it's now being considered for reintroduction area, which is obviously super good. But, we don't have to pay the Norwegians to give us 10 beavers if we want to reintroduce them to Wales. We can just have some of the problem ones from up Tayside, bring them down, and, they might have to change their accents pretty quickly.
I feel like they'd adapt. Beavers are pretty versatile.
Oh, yeah. They'd have this lovely kind of Welsh kind of
a Welsh Scottish fusion accent. Now that would be nice.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Anyway, we are completely off topic with these people. So yeah, the long and short of it is, you have legal beavers and illegal beavers in the UK now. So what I might quickly do is run through this kind of reintroduction feasibility profile, which I've been putting together on all of these species reintroductions. So for every species we podcast about, you're going to see at the end a little reintroduction feasibility profile, kind of saying, is it possible to bring them back? Should we bring them back?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. I want to know what we can bring back.
If it was up to me, we'd bring back everything. So, Eurasian beaver, castor fibre, date extinct in the UK, 14th to 16th centuries. Ecosystem services that they provide and we've lost, well, you've got wetland and lake creation, you've got reduced risk of flooding, creating habitats for lots of water birds, otters, bats, insects. The pros are, as I just said. The cons would be you do have a potential for flooding of riverside agricultural pasture and potentially damaging to riverside human infrastructure. Does the habitat exist to bring them back? Yes.
Yes.
Status, are some of them back? Yes, but we need more. And so the final score out of 10 that I'm going to give the Eurasian beaver for reintroduction is 9.
No, I thought you were going to say 10.
The only reason it's not 10 is because they can flood agricultural pastures, which is obviously an issue. You've got to work with farmers. If you're going to bring back these animals, we've got to bring everyone forward at the same time. We can't leave anyone behind.
No, I think that's very true, and it's true for all conservation and reintroduction. You can't just go in and be like, just from the viewpoint of the beavers. You need to consider the farmers, you need to consider the anglers' concerns, and I think by working with them, hopefully people can sort of dismantle some of these blocks that people have towards bringing them back, because we would love to see them back in
everywhere.
More places.
Could you imagine if we had beavers everywhere? That'd be amazing.
Yes, it would be so good. But I feel that's a really good place to kind of wrap up this video podcast about beavers. So we hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to, if you want to, subscribe to the Grizzly YouTube channel, and then also Biome by Grizzly on Instagram. You can get more updates about podcasts that are coming next.
Yeah, and if you want to check us out on Instagram as well, we would much appreciate it. So Emma is at Emma Hodson Wildlife, and I'm at Roby Watkinson Wildlife, which keeps it really nice and simple because we're kind like that.
Yeah, we'll see you all
see you next time.